Purpose of the meeting, we've kind of been asked, and I'll get to our role here in a little bit, but basically the reason we're here is to discuss, and I'm not going to read every slide word for word, but if I get real nervous, I might tend to read more than I would. So, but the purpose, we're here to discuss information that's been provided to us concerning or related to contaminants, particularly radioactive contaminants present in our community. I'm sure everybody's familiar with what we're talking about to start with, and we'll get into the details as we go. But we'd like to lay out basically before you today what we know and begin to process to understand what we have, what is it, where's it coming from, potential impact, if any, to human health and the environment. Role of the health district. I've been asked a few times, and our board's been asked, why are you interested in this? Why are you doing this? And the thing that comes to my mind is, we're interested in food safety. We're interested in campground safety. We regulate a lot of things at the health department. So if we're worried about the temperature of food on, one of our local food buffets, we hear something about transuranics at a school, we have to take that serious. Just like we do a food complaint. Somebody complains about something, we go check it out. Somebody complains about a swimming pool, we check it out. So this is no different to start the process of, our involvement in seeing what's going on and where we go from here. Mission and vision is also on. There's agendas in the back. If nobody got the agenda, we can send those out if anybody needs them. We've been around almost 100 years, and again, our role is to protect not only community health, public health, but the environment. So mission and vision's there. And if we wouldn't have a meeting like this to at least get the information out there to discuss, we're not fulfilling our mission and we'll never see our vision. So that's, to uphold those. Mission to improve the quality of life of individuals and families in Pike County by preventing disease, promoting health, and providing environmentally safe surroundings. Vision to see Pike County, our county, as a healthy community, living, working, playing, and learning in a safe environment. The last part really, brings home to me safe environment, and that's what we're talking about here today. How did we get to this point? I'll go through some slides. We want to make this, short and sweet as we can, and then we'll have some question and answer towards the end. So if you think of some burning question for me, for EPA, DOE, ODH, jot that down so you don't forget it. Discussion of DOE data. How we got here originally started with a media report a few weeks ago. So what we have happen is a lot of concerned citizens call. We get calls all the time, whether it's bed bugs, roaches. Some are silly, some are very valid. But we get calls all the time. So we had calls after the media report that mentioned transuranics, neptunium found at Zonscorn School. So as you can imagine, we start getting calls, and then concerned parents, they're scared. Is it safe for my kid to go to school? What's this mean? What is it? What's neptunium-237? Unless you might remember it from school or college, but probably haven't heard of it, depending on what you do, unless you're involved in that field. So we got the calls, and then the next step for us was research. It's on the periodic table. What is it? What's it mean? It is a product, and you can look there. Product of fission and the spent nuclear fuel that was introduced into the cascade. So we're talking about the uranium enrichment process. It is an uncarcinogen and most oftentimes enters the body through ingestion or inhalation. So that's just a real quick snippet on one neptunium-237. There's other isotopes. The one we're talking about is 237 today. So we started doing our own research, looking into it just like we would with any other, contamination event or nuisance or whatever we're investigating. Leads us to the ACER report. This is a 2017 report that DOE releases, and they send it to public partners. Question is, why are you talking about something from 2017? That's when we get to that report. So all this is 2 years behind, and that's, so if the question is, why do we have it? Why are we talking about it now when it's 2017? Because it was released, the beginning part of the year. Page 418 specifically mentions, this is from the ACER report, these are all public documents. Neptunium-237 detected as Zonscorn School. Okay? And again, this is what starts kind of our process. So we got to figure out where it come from, why is it there, is it harmful, what does it mean? That leads us to a little more research. Again, reviewing public records, mainly DOE reports, 2001, 2002. Those reports, and again, DOE or we can be specific, but we can give you the reports that are public record, and I'm sure DOE would be happy to provide you with these as well. Concerning transfer of land where the current on-site waste disposal facility sits. So these two reports we're going to talk about, that's what it's for. States basically neptunium, and there's some highlights there, but I'm going to just go over a few other things that's not up there. But as we started looking at these reports, it's it's a very compelling possibility, that we started to kind of put two and two together. These are developed by DOE for submission to the EPA, like I said, for land transfer. DOE soil sampling identified multiple contaminants, and these are all listed, including transuranic elements, plutonium, and neptunium. These are not our reports, these are DOE reports. Further in these reports, the DOE states affirmatively that they were the source. So we have neptunium on the site. Where did it come from? DOE says it was from us and from our operations. Again, public record, that can be reviewed at any time. Kind of hit those 3 points. Then it leads us to, again, this is just our research, just like with anything. So we get down to the 2015 record of decision. Page 2-6. This basically, the first 3 paragraphs gives a history of the contamination, what's there, where it come from, and it's all explained. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details. That can be at a later time. So they identify contaminants present in scenarios encountered that could have resulted in the release of those contaminants. This is again from the RAW, the record of decision. Transuranic elements, including neptunium, were identified specifically. But then at the bottom, this is a quote directly from page 2-6. Leaks and off-gassing from process gas equipment or components being repaired or replaced resulted in the release of airborne uranium, transuranic constituents, fission products, which we talked about fission with neptunium-237 earlier, fluorine and hydrogen fluoride gas. Again, that's from the DOE report. That's actually from the record of decision, which goes along with the 2001 and 2002 reports as far as us doing our background on, what's there and what does it mean. Okay, summary to this point. I know I've talked fast and skimmed over a lot of stuff, but I'll read this word for word because this, if you didn't pay attention or if I'm already boring you, this is where we're at. We have DOE confirming the presence of neptunium on the location of the on-site waste disposal facility. DOE details that neptunium, says it was present in their process, further explained pathways from their system to the environment, and finally DOE identified their operations as the source. This is not me, the health department, anybody saying this. This is DOE in 2001, 2002, and then 2-6 in the ROD saying this is what's there, and this is how it got there, and we were the, from our processes. So that gets us to, how could it get from, the plant? I grew up here, I've been here my whole life. The A plant is what I typically call it. So if I refer to it as that, that's why. So born and raised here. On-site waste disposal facility construction basically is what we're going to talk about here. So how did it get to the air monitor at Zones Corner School that's 2 odd miles away? Start looking, and this research kind of, come full circle, and it's not hard to at least give a logical explanation to where it potentially could have came from. Now, whether it's harmful, what's that mean? What that means, we're not saying, but we put 2 and 2 together, and this is kind of what we came up with. So the ACER report comes out in 2017, and this is about the same time as the construction on the on-site waste cell starts. So the original parcel, you've got a huge parcel of land, and it's already been, according to DOE, their processes, there's neptunium found there. So you've got massive excavation done, ground clearing, earth moving operations, soil staging. What do you think is going to happen when you're dozing? I know some people in here that know a lot about excavation. What happens when you're dozing dirt?
It was in the air.
It was in the air, a lot of dust. If you drive by, massive amounts of soil being dug up, placed in piles. moved around, bulldozed, to be to all in the for the purpose of creating the cell. Then the buildings and stuff that's left, tear it down and just rough, a very rough summary of what the cell is for. Tear the stuff down, put it in the ground as opposed to shipping it out west. Is the idea. So, again, we mentioned the dust. So we already got neptunium there. Is it really a stretch to say that the neptunium that was the hit at Zones Corner School came from dozing excavation at that site? That's why we're here. You can make your own assumption and conclusion on that, but we have to at least, based on our research, just like with anything we're doing, to say what the plausible cause or what makes sense on this contamination. Again, so can we say, in the health department, can anyone say, is it a certainty that the neptunium came from the site? We can't say that it's a certainty or that was 100% where it came from. Is it reasonable to assume that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there other logical sources from where the neptunium could have came from? We don't know of any. So maybe that's something that can be talked about in the question and answer session. So, so that's where we're at up to this point. So this comes back full circle to the press release. Out of an abundance of caution with a focus on our jobs to protect health and environment, we did the press release, which we call for the cessation. Stop doing what you're doing at the on-site waste disposal facility. Just err on the side of caution. We're saying that potentially this, it makes sense to us. Stop what you're doing and figure that out, and then let us know if it's safe. And then, maybe a different plan going forward. It's not anything different than what happened out in Hanford. If you're familiar with out there, there was some off-site contamination. They shut everything down for 15 months. So it's not unreasonable to ask, hey, stop what you're doing, figure out if this is a problem, and if it is, what do we do about it? So again, we kind of hit those points already. So at this point, I'm going to give DOE, Department of Energy, EPA, ODH, just time to respond to that information, and whoever wants to start, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm Greg Simonton from the Department of Energy, and I'm prepared to talk about some of the aspects of the ACER, particularly the air monitoring program. The air monitoring program that we have established as part of reporting requirements from the DOE orders. I don't have the order off the top of my head, but we do an annual report that summarizes the material that leaves the site on an annual basis. We have an air monitoring network of about 15 or 16 air monitors around the site. Those sites are chosen not by happenstance. They actually are chosen based on logical pathways for where material can travel to or to leave the site. And so you have the distance away from the site. The placement is all done based on some modeling and some scientific research and basis. Then you go to the property owners to try to get as close to the ideal locations for each of our air monitors. Those air monitors run 24/7, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. They run so that we can gather data to make sure that what's leaving the site, if anything, is safe. In this particular case, we had 2 detects for neptunium-237 in the month of October of 2017. So one was at the location mentioned earlier. The other was about 5 miles west of the site on Camp Creek. So those are different directions, and so that makes some information makes you think about. Jeremy Davis will talk about some of the levels, but the actual air monitoring program itself, we have these air monitors are essentially about this tall, and they will suck air into the top of them, and they run through a filter. Those filters are changed on a weekly basis. We take those and collect them, and on a monthly basis, we have them analyzed. The analysis comes back and allows us to make sure that there's nothing out there that would be harmful or above or even approaching the levels that we're allowed to have released from the site. If there ever was an issue, then we would be able to take action appropriately and rectify whatever that situation was. In this case, the levels weren't deemed to be at any level that was actionable or require us to do anything off-site. So it was just compiled like we've done for about 30 years with the ACER. It's mild throughout the year. We do a summary, you end up with the ACER report. It does take, a long time. I guess the point is, it's 2017 data, but if there were a problem along the way, we would know it, we'd be able to address it, we would notify the right people, and we would take action. The levels here, Jeremy, I'd like for you to help me address that. I'm not really a technical person, but this is put in place. This is to make sure that what is leaving the site is not even approaching the limits. If it does, we start taking action. And it's a protocol, and it's there to protect you, also to protect us, to make sure what we're doing is okay. Jeremy, do you want to talk about the levels?
Sure. So my name is Jeremy Davis. I know a lot of you folks in this room. I've been down at the plant for about 17 years, and what Greg said is correct. We have 16 monitoring locations located around there are 6 on-site and there are 10 off-site. 3 of those monitoring stations, there's one on Portsmouth Road, there's one on Portsmouth and Taylor Hollow Road, and there's also one located adjacent to the research center. And there's also the one in question, which was the one next to Zion's Corner School. So the ACER report is very clear. The result is 0.00015 picocuries per gram. Now, the dose calculations weren't performed on that particular air monitoring station due to the fact that an on-site monitoring station had levels that were higher. So the dose calculation for that, the air monitoring station that was located on-site, yielded a result. If you were to live at that air monitoring station for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, your dose would have been approximately 0.00046 milligram for that entire year. Now, Greg referred to the actionable limit. So EPA, they're here today to talk about their actionable limits. That their level is 10 milligrams per year in an ambient air monitoring. So we were well below the reporting criteria to push us into an action. That's the reason there was no action taken to notify anyone, because this level was extremely low that we found in this air monitoring result. Now, saying that, I did also want to talk about how the air monitoring, or how the air monitors are configured. And I know there's a lot of people in this room who already know this, but inside that filter, inside that pump, is an air pump that continuously pulls in volumes of air. It has about a 4 by 6 inch filter, and it runs continuously, and that filter is designed to attract these particles. The levels that were detected were extremely low, but you gotta understand this thing is designed to attract these kind of things so that we can see these detections real time. That being said, we do not have the 2018 ACER out at this time, but all of our data is in, and we have not had any detections for neptunium-237 in any of the data for 2018. So this does create the questions about this being a possible anomaly. That's how the department has been looking at this result. And we're here to make sure we not only protect the public, but also our workers as well. So that being said, the source of the neptunium being introduced into the the gaseous diffusion process was through reactor refeeds. And that was done for a short time in the 1970s. And that is also monitored at the source to protect our workers as well. And we still have not have a basic characterization was done of the process buildings and the process piping before we started the demolition. And the neptunium that was found in that process piping was very minimal, and was not even close to taking an actionable level for us to even take action to protect the worker. So neptunium is a activation product. It comes from bombarding. We have one of the ODH's health physicists here, so he's probably more of an expert on that than I am. But I'll kind of touch on, neptunium is also a naturally occurring product, and it can be found naturally. But That being said, the most prevalent avenue for which we find it in our atmosphere was due to atmospheric testing and also off-gassing from nuclear reactors that provide power. So, we're kind of on the same lines. We can't tell you that for sure it did not come from our site. It is a possibility, but we also want you to understand there are possible other sources for that as well. And the reason I brought up the location of some of those air monitoring stations is that no detections were made at those 3 other air monitoring stations when this report came out. The OSWDF, that happens to be one of my projects. When we did a study of that location, DOE has an order about evaluating land. And we deemed that land that makes up the OSWDF as being non-impacted. So when you look at making that determination, you have to look at 2 things. You have to look at the use history, and then you have to do characterization of that property to make a determination of whether it is impacted or non-impacted. So the use history for this area had never stored radioactive material in that location. However, a full characterization was done of that, and sampling was performed in that location. And in the soil samples that were done at that time, there were no detections of neptunium-237 found at that time. So that area was deemed non-impacted and a good location for us to start construction on those. Did I miss anything, Dave?
Oh, there are 2 sample times, 2006 and 2011-13. So twice we sampled the soils, they were both negative. No detects on those.
Yep. So what J.D. Dow was here, he worked for B&W, and he also pointed out there was a sample taken in 2006 as well, and there were no detections of neptunium-237 in the soil or the ambient air at that time on that 340-acre location.
Anyone from EPA, ODH, have anything to add to that? Welcome to. I guess I just have one question. I have one question and answer. See, there's 2 hits according to the 2001-2002 report. 2 hits of neptunium, 2 of plutonium on that 340-acre parcel. So do you have a map that can say where the hits were, that's not MD, where the waste cell is?
Yeah, I have a report here. I'd like to look at it.
I'm not concerned with 2006 and 11. I'm concerned with the 2001 and 2 report that says, your report says neptunium and plutonium is on that 340-acre parcel. I guess my question is it located within the 100 acres roughly, or is it off somewhere else?
Matt, I'm not aware of that report that says that there is for neptunium. I'd have to read it.
Yeah, I can get to you. I mean,
This is the historical site assessment for those that have pre-construction activities. If you look, there's a map on there of all the locations that were tabled.
okay. This is, and I don't have that to pull up, but like we stated, the 2001 and 2002, this is the DOE report that says, 2 hits, where those hits are within that 340-acre parcel. We couldn't tell because the EIC Center, who holds these records at the County Endeavor Center, couldn't produce that public record report. So that's why we couldn't actually look. But there were 2 hits in 2001, 2002. I'm not concerned with that. That's I'd like to clarify something.
So
ODH and
yeah, I want to clarify something. So in 2001, there was an ambient air monitoring detection of neptunium-237. Would that report refers to, or?
I can get that. Yeah, I mean, you guys have a report, but I've got it handy, so I'll send it along. That's something we need to figure out.
If we have, we'll find.
Yeah.
Can I ask some questions?
We'll do questions and answers at the end. So we'll do this part, and then you're welcome to ask as soon as we get to that part. I kind of jumped the gun, but
340 acres, like, reason I would like to ask one.
okay. Yep. ODH again, EPA, good. Okay.
I guess there was a question about what the dose rate calculation truly means. So in comparison to what a person experiences in a normal everyday life, a person flying in an airplane, getting dental X-rays, that kind of thing, you will take in about a dose of 600 millirems each year. That's just, just going about your everyday life. And this result that we had was
From uranium or neptunium? From radon,
from all of that put together. From all that put together.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the result that we had was 0.0046 millirem over an entire year if you were to live at that air station. So, this is a relatively small dose, and we just want to point that out. So if everybody has a smoke detector in their house, if it's an ionizing smoke detector that has an americium source in it, it gives off, it decays over time into neptunium-237, and then in 1 year you could experience a dose of possibly 1 milligram just from that smoke detector in your house.
Is the Ohio EPA here?
Yes.
Are they gonna weigh in?
They're not going to say anything? We do not have a finding of fact. They've taken $3.5 million from Doe on this site. You've covered
Yeah,
up
we'll
the
get
fact
the
that
question, and they'll have a chance,
But I would like to say something. I'd like to know someone from the government.
Let's get to the end, and, yeah, we'll stay with it, and they'll have a chance to respond. Yep, there'll be a question and answer, so we'll get there.
EPA's on the agenda.
Good to go? I'm going to ask Elizabeth Lamerson to come up. There'll be a PowerPoint. Pull that up while.
Good afternoon, my name is Elizabeth Lamerson. I am a mother and a fence line neighbor of the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant. I have and am concerned with on-site disposal and open-air demolition activities at the Ports facility. I have tried to take part in the regulatory process by participating in public comment sessions and asking questions to the Department of Energy in order to protect my family and my community. I was directed to send my many questions to Yvette Cantrell, a contractor of DOE. My emails date back to October of last year, and I had questions way before that. I've been to public comment sessions. I've gotten 0 answers. So far from Yvette or anybody, I have received 0 responses to any of my questions. One of the many questions included asking for air modeling information that will show the community will be safe when these buildings are demolished and waste will be placed in the disposal cell. This information has never been received. This led me to take matters into my own hands and purchase a professional grade air monitor to ensure protection of my family and my community. I also began working with 2 subject matter experts that work to analyze samples collected around the community on a pro bono basis. Various samples were collected around the community. The data will be explained by the scientists. I want to introduce Michael E. Ketterer, PhD, chemist, research specialist in studies of uranium and transuranics in the environment, and Professor Emeritus at the Northern Arizona University, and Scott C. Sichaney. He's a radiochemist. He's worked at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, the United States Geological Survey, among other places. So please welcome Michael and Scott, and they are on the phone because they live out west. So, okay, are you guys there?
Yes, I'm there. Hello, everybody. I'm Michael.
We're good.
Yeah, you there, Scott? Yeah, go ahead. I have a constable. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I have some ties to Ohio. My late parents lived in Summit County for 40 years, and I still have nephews up there. And really, only recently I've learned anything about the site in Pike and problems associated with it. So I want to tell you about some of the studies that
Hey, Michael.
Scott and I did in collaboration. Yep.
Okay, could you speak up if you could? Just if you can.
Yeah.
That's
okay,
better. That's better.
I'll hold the phone. That's better?
I think, is that better?
Was.
It was, when you were talking into it, it was louder, yeah.
Okay, let me continue. So I have a PowerPoint presentation, and we'll go to slide 2. And this is the report that we have just produced and released today. It's delivered to Elizabeth, but also all of you fellow citizens of Pike County, Ohio. We completed a pro bono study, which means we were not paid, and we won't accept any money for doing this work. So Scott and I have worked with Elizabeth, and we're very grateful to Elizabeth for being the boots on the ground and collecting the samples and so on. And here's the title of our study, Investigation of Anthropogenic, I mean human-caused, uranium, neptunium, and plutonium in environmental samples from vicinity, Pike in Ohio. So if we could go to slide 3. This is kind of an overview of what we were doing. We got the samples from Elizabeth, and we performed the analysis at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. Scott and I made a couple of trips there. And we are specialists in what you might call nuclear forensics approaches. So we're doing the same kind of work that some of the best laboratories in the U.S. as well as the world do to investigate, say, sources and activities of nuclear constituents. So the kinds of questions that we're looking at are summarized on slide 3. This is the text that is right from our written report, which is being released today. So the question, first one off, is can we find non-naturally occurring uranium? Uranium is present everywhere in nature, and I can find some in my backyard, and you can as well anywhere in the Earth's surface. But we're looking for non-naturally occurring uranium. And the second question is pretty much the same thing about neptunium and plutonium. Here the question is a little different, is because these guys, as our colleague from DOE said, these guys are found from nuclear weapons tests, but they're also coming from other sources, local and regional environments. So the null hypothesis, kind of the default condition of our study, or the default assumption is that, well, all the uranium is naturally occurring, and all the neptunium and plutonium is from the nuclear weapons testing fallout. And I've studied nuclear weapons testing fallout for almost the last 20 years, and you can find it on all the continents, that's for sure. Okay, please go to slide 4. Our methodology is focusing on what you might call isotope fingerprinting. So we use something that's called mass spectrometry. Basically, all it does is count atoms. You can count how many atoms you have with different mass. So it's very good for measuring isotope ratios. If we go to slide 5, the reason we're focusing on isotope ratios, and for uranium, in fact, we haven't even measured concentration. And, we're not comparing anything to the MCL, and that statement is made in the report. But we're focusing on these isotope ratios because that's like signature information. Where does the stuff come from? That's a different question from how much. So think about where from versus how much. Are you guys, am I projecting well enough?
If you could speak a little louder, the ones in the back I think are having a little, but I think overall it's pretty good.
Okay, I'm as close as I can.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you have an amplifier or something there, but anyway, I'll continue.
Okay.
If we go to slide 6, we are focusing on 4 different isotopes of uranium. 238, 235, 234, and then also 236. And so these 4 we can measure by mass spectrometry. This slide also notes 233 and 232, we're not measuring those at all. And with the mass spectrometer, what we do is we take the data and express them as ratios or fingerprints. And more of this is explained in our report. And I have to say, we're not inventing anything. We are standing upon the foundation of decades and decades of science, and all of this is known in all of the DOE labs and so on. for instance, where Scott used to work, there are subject matter experts that know way more about this than I do. Anyway, the reason, we go to slide 7, the reason for pointing out uranium-236 is uranium-236 is associated with recycled uranium, just as our GOE colleague said. In a reactor, it's produced by capture of neutrons by uranium-235. That same process produces neptunium, plutonium, and fission in the reactor produces this technetium, which you guys call tech. So, what happened is, from what I've read in the open literature, from what my understanding is, what happened is that over a long period of time, the feed to the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Facility, as well as the similar plant, Paducah, they were all using recycled uranium. And the reason for that is during the Cold War, there was a critical shortage of uranium. And so uranium was recovered from the plutonium production reactors. And uranium-236 is chemically the same as the other uranium, so it goes along with the recovered uranium. But the neptunium and plutonium and the technetium are contaminants from the separation process. And so those all enter the feed of the plant. Now, it's probably classified as to what happened when, but, it's my understanding that this was an ongoing activity. Okay, if we could go to slide 8, I'll show you a little bit about how to think about and interpret. I believe in graphical information, so I'm trying to show you things graphically. This is standard practice in the field. You look at mixing, what are called mixing plots. And these are just ratios plotted one against the other with a common denominator. So 235 over 234 or 238 over 234, something like that. You make a plot, and we focus on what are called end members and mixing lines. So end members are the pure components that would be mixed together. And mixing processes are what happens when you mix those together. So slide 9 shows the mixing line, and it works like this for pretty much any pairs of ratios. So the line between those two red dots is the mixing line, and the red dots themselves are the end members of different compositions. So if you have something that matches an end member, it plots right at that end member on this diagram. If you have a mixture of those two end members, then you get a point along that line. Now, on the other hand, if you have something else, another source that's different, completely different, then it plots somewhere else. Usually, it doesn't have to, but usually it does. Okay, if we can go to slide 10, I want to show you here some of the sources that we relied on in this work. And this is, on the left, is what we're calling the Moody study. So this was done by Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and this is DOE-funded work. And what Moody did was to collect samples from internally in the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Facility and also the Paducah facility. And this was done in the 1994 era. The report was published in 95. So Moody's samples are from 1994, and they collected materials and characterized all of these isotopes. So we regard the Moody report as a pretty good description of an end member. It's indisputable because it came from the facility and it was done by DOE. It's an end member for what might come from ports. Now, the issue is it's just a snapshot. It's 3 samples from a vast facility, and it's only, one single point in time, but it's the best guess that we have. That's what I can say. On the right is a similar characterization, and this is for plutonium and neptunium in global fallout. And this paper on the right, I first remember reading almost 20 years ago and thinking, if I'm going to start measuring plutonium in the environment, this is what to compare it to. It's something else going on. Because this is regarded by everyone, and has hundreds of citations. It's regarded by everyone as the benchmark paper in the field. And this was done at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and it's also DOE-funded work. Okay, so if we go to slide 11, I'll get a little bit into the measurements we make, and then we'll look at some of the results. So I'll try to go fast so we have time. So mass spectrometry counts numbers of atoms, and it's very graphical. And you can instantly tell the difference between, say, naturally occurring uranium and some kind of enriched uranium. Look at the two computer screen shots on the left and the right. So the one on the left is naturally occurring uranium, and the one on the right is a type of enriched uranium, probably close to highly enriched uranium. That one is from the Nuclear Fuel Services outfall going into the Nolechucks River in Tennessee. But anyway, we're on slide 11. Just, hopefully, you're at the same spot, Elizabeth, and that's what we do with mass spectrometry. Is we measure patterns like this, take ratios of the peak heights, and there are our fingerprints or atom or isotope ratios that we use as data. So at Northern Arizona University in 2009, I bought a machine mass spectrometer as shown in the picture on slide 12. So this is the exact same instrument that Scott and I were using in Flagstaff to collect these data that came from the samples that Elizabeth collected for us. And this will measure uranium isotope ratios, and we also have radioactive materials like that NAU to measure plutonium. And that I have the capability of doing that there, which I'm grateful for.
And I'd just like to say, by the way, that that's not what the lab looks like right now.
Yes, that's the, thanks, Scott, that's the thing, you're right. Thanks for the interjection. That's the first day it came out of the box. If you go back to slide 12, you can see the boxes from the instrument in the back. It's actually been moved to a different room. But anyway, let's see. If we go to slide 13, I found this picture on the internet. This is an aerial view of the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Facility. We did no work inside the fence, obviously. We did not go onto any government property in this study. I've never been inside the facility. But what we're talking about here is the periphery. You know, we'll call it off-site environment. What found off-site using these methodologies. So slide 14 is a Google map aerial view, and you know, roughly we're talking about the proximity within 2-3 miles of the facility. Elizabeth Lamerson was our colleague, of course, who took the samples and would know the exact location. In our report, we are not disclosing any locations of any samples taken on private property, and we will not disclose that information. So, on slide 15, I'll kind of get to the bottom line here. This is quoted from our report. Finding number 1, we've got enriched uranium in surface waters. It's found in sediments. It's also found in dust at residences. And the enriched uranium also contains uranium-236. The uranium-236 is not explainable by any other source. It has to be pretty much from the Portsmouth facility. And the uranium compositions that we have agree with the kind of mixing that you would expect from the Moody study. So point number 2, we are also finding neptunium and plutonium that is of non-fallout origin. It cannot be explained by global fallout. It's not from nuclear weapons testing. It may contain some of that, but it necessarily has to have something else in it. And this is found in some of the sediments of Little Beaver Creek, Big Beaver Creek, some other streams. It's in some of the suspended sediments, and we've also found it, in particular neptunium, in some interior dust, in some barn dust samples near the facility. So this is off-site. And so there's neptunium, there's definitely neptunium that's airborne, and it is not explainable by
global or stratospheric fallout. And we are again relying on results of Moody and results of Kelly, DOE-funded studies to make these characterizations. Number three, we were talking about the landfill construction area. We have some samples of some of the suspended sediment that were collected from the creek during near where the landfill construction area is. I don't really know the geography, and I've never seen these areas, but this is my understanding from Elizabeth of where these samples are from. What we found in those suspended sediments is some non-fallout neptunium. So that, to me, is saying that there's a probable source of neptunium-237 in the surface materials within that creek drainage basin. Number four, we have found some enriched uranium within some of the dust inside the local school, and we also find enriched uranium is fairly prevalent in many attic dust samples, including we have some from a residence that was actually constructed in 2007. So this is, something that post-date when the facility was actually in process operation. My understanding is that ceased in 2001. So to the last point, I think that the assembled evidence says that, and I'll use the word to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that it's the Ports facility that's responsible for what we're seeing in the environment. And I can show you, go ahead to the last couple of slides. This is all in the report, and I apologize to everybody that, this report is not really very readable to many people. It's kind of like a scientific argument, you might say. And it's rather like me trying to read tax code or, a prospectus from some kind of stock investment. I can't read that stuff. But the report is written in a way that it's supposed to support scientifically all these things that I'm saying. So pictures often tell the story. On slide 16 and 17, we're showing some of the uranium isotope data and how there's mixing of different types of uranium, naturally occurring uranium, and some enriched uranium. The red line is taken from the Moody data from samples collected within Ports. So that looks like reasonable match in this business. And here's on slide 17, this is a similar mixing diagram. These are soil and dust samples from the proximity of in the Pike vicinity, let's say. And again, the red mixing line is taken with data points in the Moody 1995 study. Finally, I'll go to slide 18. And this takes a look at the neptunium and the plutonium. And this is pursuant to the question about global fallout. So I'm putting the y-axis, the vertical axis on a log scale because we find very, very large variations in these ratios. That's really not normal. If you were looking at plutonium and neptunium from weapons testing fallout in the whole continental U.S., you would see stuff that's in that blue point ellipse down there at the bottom where it says Kelly, North America fallout. All the points, and I measured thousands of global fallout plutonium, and they're all, kind of in that box, especially for the upper right portion of that box. Now, if you take the data from Moody's paper, the measurements from the Portsmouth facility aren't really good enough to plot this on the plot, but the Paducah facility plots up there on the upper left with the yellow points that says Moody Paducah. Now, I'm also including some of the samples that we got from the Pike vicinity, and what this all says to me is it's not going to be a line because of the log scale. It's going to be more like curves. But what we're saying here is that the neptunium and the plutonium in the environment is not accountable for global fallout. It's coming from some mixing process. The Moody data seem to explain that, and I'll point out the sample on the upper left, the red point that's towards the upper left of that ellipse. Those are sediments from Little Beaver Creek, and the neptunium concentrations in those sediments are probably on the order of 100 times normal for global fallout. And then some of the other samples that are talked about in the report, the barn dust sample, they're all in that red ellipse. So it's different than global fallout, and yes, there's stuff that's airborne that appears to be, in this pattern. Okay, I'll go to slide 19, and this is kind of emphasizing what's powerful about these mixing diagrams. This is, as I said, the Kelly paper. I read that, I took it to heart, and I said, now I've got something that I can use in my new field. And just draw your attention to the last 3 lines. When you see something, Kelly is talking about something in a slightly different context, but the same words kind of ring true here. If something else is going on, you're going to get data points that are so far away from the mixing line that they will be obvious. And that's my opinion here today. So that pretty much concludes my remarks. I have a bunch of acknowledgments to make, especially to Elizabeth and all her fellow citizens of Pike County that were cooperating with taking samples. I'm grateful to my co-author Scott for putting up with me and some of our really good discussions and also contentious arguments. I'm very grateful to Northern Arizona University and the state of Arizona for supporting my work. And we've done this for the public benefit, and this is all intended for public dissemination. Finally, there's a couple other people to thank: Jenny Ingram, Jim Biddle, and my colleague from Spain, Pepe Montalbuena. So that pretty much concludes my remarks. Scott, would you like to add some comments on what we've done?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Other than we do plan on continuing following this, and I believe we're going to be going for scientific publication with more details and et cetera, et cetera.
Can we ask him a question?
Okay.
We're going to go ahead and give DOE, EPA, and DH a chance to respond, and then they can hang on to the question and answer.
Can you guys stay on the phone?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I got today.
And there are copies of their
Well, not
report.
literally.
There are copies of their report and also the 2 reports that they referenced, the Moody and the Kelly report. I have copies of those. I don't have as many of those because they're a lot longer, but I have some copies of the Northern Arizona University. So.
And we'll just give,
Clearly, this is a brand new report, and we respect, what this is, the undertaking this was. We have no way of making a comment until, of course, we get a chance to review it. It would be inappropriate, too premature. So we'd like to request a copy and be able to, interact with you to have these questions answered. And Jeremy, you have anything to add to that?
Like Greg said, we would look forward to reviewing it with the data we already have as well. And I just want to be clear about one thing. We're not saying that the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant is, it cannot be a source. We acknowledge that, and that's why we do the monitoring in the first place. And look forward to reviewing the report and help understand the data.
EPA or anything?
Still will be quiet.
Could he please repeat that? We did not hear what he said in reference to phone going off. Sorry. Could you repeat what you said, Mr. Davis?
Just that we want to reiterate that the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant is it possibly could be the source of the Neptune. We're not saying it's not. We just want you to consider the other sources as well. Look forward to reviewing the report and compare it to the data that we already have. And that's why we do the monitoring for Neptune in the first place, is we acknowledge that there was Neptune in the gaseous diffusion that we were operating. So
because it's man-made. It's not natural.
Well,
37 is man-made.
It can be natural. I mean, but yes, the majority of it is man-made, Mr. Smith. You're correct. You're correct.
This time, I know,
May I ask a question?
yeah, we're almost there. And I assure you, the air conditioner is on as high as it will go, so we can't make it down any higher, unfortunately.
You Ohio EPA representative, what's your name, please?
Craig Butler.
Where is Dustin Tashuti here?
No.
Why is he not here? Is he not the site person?
He is not.
We'll have everybody before it's over, identify themselves, and some of us take down their names, and, you know, at the end, let's go to the question and answer, and I know this can be emotional, potentially controversial. Any questions need to be respectful. If it gets to the point that it's a mob activity, we'll just end the questions, we'll do a final statement, and then everybody can enjoy their Saturday. So we'll do this roughly 15 minutes, as long as it stays professional and in a manner that it needs to be. So if you got a question, you raise your hand. Who are you addressing? And we got one in the back we'll start with. We'll see how this goes.
My name is Jim Parker. My wife and I have lived here with our children for more than 20 years. I'm a hospital CEO, so health and well-being of people is right at the heart of my concern. I do have two questions, one for the Department of Energy, but in general, is there anybody from our congressman's office here today?
Yes.
What's your name?
My name is Teresa Lewis. I'm the Regional Director for Congressman Brad Winter.
Nice to meet you, Teresa. I was a candidate for the United States Congress 3 times and won Pike County and Sauter County, came in second all the way to Cincinnati a couple times with no money and no help. I did it by going out and knocking on doors of people that I care about. My family and I live as close to where we're standing right now as Commissioner Blaine Beekman does. Fair statement, Blaine? I think we all live by it.
That's a fair statement.
Okay. There is scientific evidence. This is to the Department of Energy. There's scientific evidence that I've heard you produce your report and then say that you're not a technical expert, and I understand that. Then you presented a technical expert who talked about anomalies. What I didn't hear you talk about was that this radioactive substance was detected in the air inside of the middle school, where parents of children are here today. I think that what the health department has asked you to do to cease operations until this can be better monitored and better understood is a reasonable and respectful thing to do. I've been to the LSU building where I've heard people speak about this back when we had a former congressperson. I've been to city council in Waverly where you've come and you've talked about it. And now I'm here and I have not said a word. What is happening here is inherently wrong, and it is dangerous for the health and well-being of the people who live near where it's happening. What will it take for somebody in the Department of Energy to listen? Now, I'll go a step further. Don't worry about what I do for a living or what I did. But we have a 3-year-old granddaughter who lives minutes away from where that substance was detected in that school. So I am speaking up today. What will it take?
So, my daughter goes to school at College Corner Elementary, which you probably already know that. And I just want to clarify, the air sample that we took, we did not take any samples inside the school, sir. Our sample was taken across the street at our air monitoring station. We've not had a chance to review this data. We can do that and get back with you, but it's not my decision to make that call of ceasing that. But I understand your frustration, and we are looking into it. So.
I've been listening to the Department of Energy talk about how they're going to look into that for years and years and years. And what does it take? People are dying. People have died. That evidence has been presented. I've seen this woman over here present that evidence. I mean, what does it take to do the right thing?
Well, sir, I can tell you, being a local citizen, I want to do the right thing as well.
I understand that. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Jim. We got two, we'll do the very back.
Yeah, my name's John Markley. I'm a resident of Jackson County, but I work in Pike County, so a third of my life is spent here. Some of the data in this report shows that Little Beaver Creek, relatively clean, comes on site, goes off with major elevations in constituents that they're measuring. It goes by the landfills that under the rod are going to be left there. They were closed in the 70s per the rules 40 years ago. This evidence indicates that these landfills may be leaking, polluting the waters of the state of Ohio, our waters. I think this constitutes grounds for reopening the rod.
Back in the back.
John Knopf. I have been employed at the facility since 1972. My dad most of the 20 years prior to that. And I have seen the equipment removal in the 70s when we did the upgrading. And I've also seen now how the components were removed in the 26th building. The most likely suspect for the neptunium or anything else on that plant site. Jeremy, how many hours would you estimate that you spent in the 26th building while active components were being removed?
10 to 20 a week.
Up on the cell floor while the components were being removed, you actually were on the job when the components were actually being removed. While I was there, I've never seen any of you on the cell floor with the components. And I would tell you that I was shocked when I was moved to that building that the whole upstairs had become a highly contaminated area. We were talking about 30 acres of an upstairs floor that we never had as a highly contaminated area previous to this component removal. And we had active, full-time, airborne radioactive zones in the building continuously. Might be a reason that took place from 2013 through 2017. Might be a reason why you didn't find those things at the landfill when you monitored before that. Most likely it came during this component removal when you weren't controlling contamination and airborne, and all the rest of it. It is deplorable. It was the first thing I said. I can't believe that we lost the control of the whole upstairs of the 326 building to the point that we only had one way up and one way down. There's hundreds of stairwells in that building. We used to be able to go up any stairwell and go to a job site with no airborne and no active contamination. The whole goal was achieve TBI, performance bonus incentive, with total disregard to contamination, both physical and airborne. And so that's the most likely how that got to the landfill area and everywhere else. And that's where it's at now. We got active components still inside that building, still with compounds in it, with the full intention of taking off the sides of the building and removing it with large equipment, casting it to the air. Certainly not any means to control that contamination. And I can tell you, the time I was there, I never seen an RSI or DOE person on the cell floor with components being removed. If you were there, I didn't see it.
Well, what's your response, Mr. Davis, in reference to the information he just disclosed?
Yeah, so we do monitor all of the, during the demolition activities to open up the 326 components. That we do what they call source point generation monitoring. So there's air monitoring running outside of the airborne contamination areas. Because you are opening up those systems and leaving them to the open air. During SIPCUP, I think that's what you were referring to. It was my understanding that, and I wasn't there at the time, but it was my understanding that each unit was taken down under vacuum and then changed out. Now, in preparation for the demolition activities, you know, it was going to be left open, so they established those airborne radioactivity areas, and monitoring was done at the source point during those times.
Is it not airborne up there on that cell floor?
It depends on what area you're in right now.
You can't stop that, you know that. When you're up there, I worked in 96 and 97,
Understood.
and I worked all over that floor, and he's right. At that time, you could go up there anywhere, in any stairs, now you can't. And if it's airborne, there ain't no young magenta train gonna keep that back. It's cost that whole 30-acre building. There's no way you can say that it's contained up there on that floor, unless it's in the cell house.
Okay, I think, this is Matt's meeting.
You're not running the meeting, Matt. I'd like to ask you a question. The CDC was at Pike in 2013 to 2015. I have the documents that says that you did not allow the CDC to come into the 326 because they were not qualified to be there. Now, here's Senator Brown's rep, who don't want to identify herself, but they're here, and she wouldn't let me film her down at Portsmouth, but she's here, she's listening, so I know he's listening. My name's Jeff Walker, and I testify in front of the United States Senate. I'm on record for calling GOE criminal. I call them criminal at the OCAS meeting. Now, I have those documents. Be glad to go to a finding of fact with anyone here and lay those documents on the table anytime the governor, who we have written certified letters on movement of assay, high assay material out of here, with people coming, all I gotta do is stand still like a priest, and somebody will get down in front of me and say, gosh, Jeff, I'd like to admit something criminal we've done at the plant. I said, I'm not a priest. What have you got to say? So we went to the FBI in 2017, and we have Carl North from the FBI come there. But the point I'm making, the CDC came, you did not let them in the 326, you did not let the Tiger team in 1992 in the 326, and you supplied the air samples. They did not fight to get in the building. They were qualified to walk down Russian reactors for IAEA, and you didn't let them in the building, but you supplied the air samples. I am suspect of those air samples. Now, if you want to see something about footprint, write this name down, NUMEC. N-U-M-E-C. There was a company in New Jersey that got material from Portsmouth that was milled. And in that story, you will find out that's how they found out that the Israelis had material from Portsmouth that developed their nuclear bomb. And another thing, the people from Arizona University, there is a secret report from Lawrence Livermore that you don't know about or you haven't mentioned that's on the isotopes. There is a secret report. We have a FOIA in for it right now to the Clinton Library. To get that secret report, you must know the facts, and the facts are in the documents, and we have the documents.
Thank you.
Yes, up front.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Joni Fearing, I live in Portsmouth. My dad worked at the egg plant in 54 to 64. I won't get into that whole story, but he did die of 5 different cancers, and we were a recipient of the OCIPA grant. The cleanup, and I'm glad Senator Brown's representative is here again, because I was at the meeting a few weeks ago, and I forgot to mention about the cleanup, that the money was put into a trust fund when that plant was built. Okay, that money was accumulating over all those years for the cleanup. That money, as my understanding, was reallocated by George W. Bush when he was president for the war. Okay, so a lot of the money that Senator Brown, thank goodness for Senator Brown getting that money back, but a lot of it's getting money back. You know, somebody's going to say. Well, that's what I was led to understand. Now, I know there's got to be a lot more than that.
$1 billion back. He got $1 billion. There's $2.3 billion in exchange between USAC, and it was for cleanup, and if you'll check, 1.3 billion went to Mayak, Russia. Check it.
So we didn't get it all back, anyway. Okay, he didn't get it all back. I thought that he got some of it back, but there was still more to be needed. So he didn't even get it all back. Okay, that's important information. The point I'm trying to make is, I believe that this cleanup, and cleanup doesn't include leaving a bunch of stuff on the site that's radioactive mess. That's not cleaning it up. And I'll bet you money, and they were told, when that plant was built, all of the residents around there, that material would not go past the chain link fence. Like, how ridiculous is that? And I'll bet you money that school is a lot further away than the chain link fence. And those homes that they've been inspecting. And all of the people that have been affected by this already. So the cleanup was promised. That stuff has to go outside of our area because we're too wet. We get too much rain. We're also in a tornado zone. You know, there's a lot of reasons why, and all that depleted uranium sitting outside in those big canisters. What is that about? So that the cleanup that was promised, now we have done our fair share. We've done our fair share. Too many people have died. Or too many people are sick. Southern Ohio has done their fair share for this Cold War effort and the safety of our country, and we can be proud of that. But we deserve a proper cleanup and a safe place for workers. Safer place. Now that may never be completely safe, but it can be up to industrial standards where an 18-year-old, anyone younger than 18 still can't go on the site, but at least it's a safer site than what it is now and what it has been. So please, and I'm glad that the Congressman Wenstrup's representative is here too. I ran for state rep, I didn't win, but I'm still active in caring for our communities in this area. And this issue is, of course, strong in my heart because of our family. I've had testing that showed I had uranium and strontium in my system. Didn't know about the A plant at the time. Didn't know that was most likely from my father bringing home that on his work clothes, and my mother washing his work clothes for 10 years while she was having those babies. So, you know, this is promised. You don't break promises. Well, the government does all the time, but thank you for letting me speak.
Can I say that? You guys have anytime you want to respond to anything, you're welcome to stand up and respond.
Yeah, my name is Larry Thomas, and I work at the plant 46 years. And in your presentation, you mentioned that there are certain levels that you guys monitor, that if it reached it, you had some kind of contingency plan. So, has that ever happened out here at the plant? That you know of?
I do not know that.
And never, I work on the monitoring station, I know where they're at, and I know all about how far away they are. I never know, and maybe you could, and that's something you could put out, is what do they look at? Well, all the different type of chemicals that you're looking at from this monitoring station. And also, if there was something that came out, what kind of contingency plans are they? What do you have that's out there that's protected the people, the community around the plant? I mean, recently we just had a fire that was strongly smelled miles off plant site, but yet nothing was ever, not hardly even talked about, much less any kind of a thing done. And so, again, I ask you, what kind of a plan are they, and what's the limits, and has it ever happened? I've been out there 46 years, I don't remember ever hearing it, so.
I don't know the answer to the question if it's ever happened, but we are going to, first of all, on the data, we're having a section in our upcoming public availability sessions, which are early or mid-May, 14th, 16th, and then the following week on Tuesday and Thursday. We will have a section with boards that has information broken out from the ACER to start, discussing that and getting that into the dialogue. Also, after the event in that you referenced, the fire, we are going to also make a presentation, develop one that will be given out. Probably take us a little bit to get it together, but to discuss what we sample for, but also action levels, what actions we take at different points. we made a commitment to do that presentation as well. So we're working on that presentation, and we are going to have the information broken out on the ACER, so it's not just laying the report on the desk and walking away. We're going to start addressing that in the upcoming public availability sessions.
Up front.
My name is Wanda Colley. I'm a whistleblower since 1983 on the Pike plant. I'm also a downwinder of this Pike plant. Chris is a long-standing organization that's been here. We have been gathering documents since 1986. I blew the whistle on the plant in 1983. I have a lot of health issues. We broke every major story of this plant about plutonium being at the plant in '99, about the Huntington plant being buried on the site. And we had a public forum on March the 18th. We invited all these people, and none of them showed up. We released documents on the plutonium and the transuranics. We also have documents on OSHA, the NIOSH or OSHA report, that tells you what's in every one of these buildings that these workers are working in. Neptunium, plutonium, americium, California, magnesium 99, you name it, we got it. Not only that, we did a study and released a study in 2005 about the 340 acres. Marvin Rezikoff, who has been studying this facility for 30-some years, he said that area was contaminated with plutonium. We released that document in 2005. So this is continuing and continuing a denial. The air monitorings that they put around the plant, according to a GAO report, they did not have enough monitors. And the monitors that they had were not placed in the right position to pick up uranium, magnesium, fluorides. We have a huge, huge release of fluorides at this facility. We actually doubled the standard in Oak Ridge and Paducah because Ohio didn't have a standard for fluorides. I think the fluorides is how all this stuff has gotten off the site. We have a lot of particulate matter. Fluorides is not being addressed. The school, we addressed it a long time ago. So these people have let your children go to this school and not let no one know what's happened. We addressed all the contamination that's going off in these creeks. We took samples, the EPA took samples, nothing. They continue today to let this happen and pretend like it just started yesterday. It has started since 1952, 53, 54. It's no big secret. And we're not in a plant getting radiation. We're getting plutonium from the plant. The workers are sick, the communities are sick, and right now, my Facebook has a lot of people from this area who are talking to me about their family cancers. We had a study here that we took up once before we knocked on door to door. You have a huge problem in this community. We have a huge problem in our community. I live probably 15 miles south of this plant. It's horrible what they've done, what they've let these people get by with. And I know, I've been speaking out for 35 plus years, and I know that they are criminals. What they are doing to us is a criminal act. And I also have been hearing about this waste sale, that they're in such a big hurry to get it done, they're not putting clean liners in some of it. Can anybody address that?
We will go in for the specifications that were submitted.
You're building 16 of them, right? 12. Okay. Aren't you in a big hurry to get some of them done and not using clay? And people getting big bonuses to do this?
Thanks, Vina. We're gonna keep it less accusatory, and if we get to the point, as long as it's productive, we'll keep going a little bit longer. If we get to the point, I see a lot of people waiting, where we can submit questions. So if you have questions, if we don't get to you, because we're not gonna stay here till 9 o'clock, submit those, we will publish those. Okay, so, back.
I'd like to go back to the gentleman that was on the teleconference call, what he said. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I heard him correctly, he made a statement that the sediment in Little Beaver Creek was 100 times over background limit. and that some other data that was taken was well elevated above natural background limits. If what he said is true, and I take it that it is, the government officials in this county and state should enact an emergency policy to stop everything out there at that plant until facts are on the table, and we cannot wait. We cannot wait on government bureaucracy. I know how long it takes the government to put a report together, and I appreciate what Jeremy said. Jeremy and I are lifelong friends. I respect him very much. But I know how government bureaucracy works. And we can't wait that long. If what this gentleman said on this teleconference call is true between him and Elizabeth, something needs to happen immediately, and it's up to our government officials who are elected to represent the constituents of this county and this state. Senator Brown, Portman, our county commissioners, you're put in office to represent us.
Not
And we want this thing stopped, and we want it stopped immediately until something is proven true or false about this data.
Absolutely.
We'll do a few more. Let's make sure the questions, and these have all been good, but let's make sure.
Let somebody else
Hands
talk.
on oxygen here, let him talk.
Hang on just a second. Let's make sure the questions concern what we're talking about today and not a lot of accusatory stuff from years past. We'll keep going. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Charles Lawson. I was at the 2014 waste cell meeting here in Waverly. And one of the statements, and here's why I'm asking this. DOE stated that there was no cracks in the bedrock. And then in the report, in the addendums, it says that the bedrock was cracked both vertically and horizontally. And that the EPA took $3.5 million, was given $3.5 million. Now, I don't know why they were given that money, but then they were given a waiver. And they say they're within 50 feet of high EPA, I believe the law says 200 feet. I may be wrong on that. But now, if you look at the plot map, they're literally 20 feet from the Tage River aquifer. Now, they said in that meeting that liner will last 1,000 years. Plutonium 239 has a half-life of 28,100 years. That's a lot greater than a 1,000-year liner. And that liner, I believe, is almost identical to the one that was used at the other two plants in Ohio, which are already leaking because the groundhog's eating holes through it. I'm not trying to be silly. I'm just trying to be factual here. And with that problem, they're saying the 5 counties around here are the ones that should stakeholders of this. And I disagree with that. And the reason being, that Tage River aquifer flows all the way to Virginia. Those people should have a say in it also, not just the 5 counties around it. This will be 1,000,000 times worse than the Love Canal incident. Because once we lose our water, we have no water. What am I supposed to do with my home? How am I going to sell it if I have no way to even flush my toilet or to wash my clothes? These are issues that we tried to address at the open meeting. And Maria Galani said, if they do as they say, we will go with it. But now that we know that they hid the stuff in the addendums, to me, that's a violation of the permit already. And I feel that Ohio EPA, and I'm not saying this is accusatory, there may be a reason why they paid them that $3.5 million. But to me, that's suspect. And with DOE and what has happened in the past, we've had incidents that I have documents before, where they have falsified radiation records on equipment going out and on the people. That is documented. So why should I believe what they're saying?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We're going to get the scientists on the phone. They want to respond to Mr. Lamson's potentially comment. So if you can hear me, you can go ahead.
Yes, this is Michael Kepler again. I wanted to, basically reinforce what the gentleman in the back of the room asked about the neptunium concentration in Little Beaver Creek. Indeed, your understanding is correct, and it's detailed in my report. In Scott and I's report, what we found was a concentration of neptunium that I would say it's on the order of about 100 times the normal expectation for global fallout, and it's very abnormal for other places in the continental U.S. It's its apparent source is the port facility, and I also comment in my report that I compare my data to the DOE's own data from 2014. There's a ACER report, and they measured the same concentrations in different units, and I compared them so that we're not looking at apples and oranges. And what the DOE measurements are pretty much in agreement with our recent samples from the creek. And what the DOE report basically says is that this is well below levels of concern. I think the point is this is a very, very unnatural condition. And if I can say one more thing, that same 2014 DOE report, which is referenced in our study, talks about 14 kilograms of uranium per year coming out through the creek and through the drainages of the port facility. And that's all going into the what you guys call the Scioto River and then the Ohio River. It's all going downstream.
I can see where that twin report of Lawrence Livermore, if he's not, I'll give him details on it. Because there's a hidden report that's marked secret. It's marked secret.
Okay, thank you. What's yours?
I just want to say that I haven't really heard anything unexpected from DOE. I appreciate you showing up and talking and being the messengers, but I think that as a citizen now, I'm more interested in what do my county commissioners have to say. Mr. Miller made a very public statement in the last week or so that has said more on this topic than I've heard from our other commissioners, past or present. And so my feeling is that you're on the clock now, and it's time to get off the fence, and there's no longer any question about what your stance should be on this issue. And we expect representation as citizens of Pike County and not representation for Fluor or anyone else that is a $1 trillion corporation operating out there. So I appreciate the statement that Mr. Miller made, but I'm very interested in hearing from the other two because we are done. I think the citizens of this county are done.
Let's hear it.
Well, I will, probably not a great idea for me to get up, but I haven't shied away from this, subject yet. I've been to every meeting that I was invited to, been to every rally, everything. To listen to the citizens, collect the information, to the best of our ability. I think we have taken a stand by saying, does anybody want a waste cell? No, nobody wants a waste cell.
Put it on the ballot.
There's no question that anybody wants a waste cell. It's just no. As far as the information, we get information, of course, from DOE, same as everybody else. We get information from citizens. I've spent, Elizabeth, I've spent time with Elizabeth. I've contacted Jennifer on several occasions. Me and Jennifer have sat down, 2, 3, 4 times, I don't know. We've spent a lot of time together. Because the last thing we want to do is make any decisions that's going to harm the health or welfare of any citizen in Pike County or the area as a whole. And so, that is where we are. We have never, we haven't hid from anything. You know,
Reopen the rod.
that's not our decision.
You can advocate for it.
I mean, we can,
You can demand it.
we can
Call
ask
for
we can demand anything, but whether or not it can happen, that is not our decision.
But do
You
it.
gotta do it.
Have you done that?
I think one of the things that's most important is that as a community, and there's a great turnout here today, it's obviously the safety of our families, the safety of our kids is what's most important to everybody. It's a difficult spot to be put in to be the people or the group that have to be subject matter experts from both sides. And so today's meeting, in my opinion, I said what I said because I'm concerned. I said what I said because I'm a dad, because I'm a citizen. We live about 1.5 miles directly east of the site. I think it's important that with Mr. Brewster's involvement, that we together get these facts. I think what's most important is that the citizen's safety and your concerns are answered by us. If we are for this, then when I say for it, if we will accept it, we have to rely on someone that is subject matter experts. Those someone, those folks, and not to put Mr. Butler on notice, but we have to rely on subject matter experts somewhere. The Ohio EPA would be our primary source of, is this safe? In addition,
From a radioactive standpoint?
no
I mean, they
ma'am,
don't have
no
that,
ma'am,
right.
not at all. From a public health standpoint, we do not have the subject matter expertise on the board. Our job is to take your concerns and put them at the flagpole, and that is what we are trying to do. Sir.
Does the Brewster have instruments that he can measure? Or are we just going by, we're just trusting the answers we get from this one party? Do you have a way of
The
measuring?
health district does not have resources, to do any type of sampling. I'm not qualified, none of our staff is qualified, that's not in our wheelhouse to do that. So, requesting help is gonna have to come from somebody besides us doing the testing.
I have the radioactive material. That's what we've been told, the health department. The NRC is not over the radioactive nuclides. DOE used to be, and now the health department, because the state of Ohio is on the SSAB board, and they come there, and they're the only ones who can test for radiation. Is that true or not true?
Mr. Phillips, I'm gonna let you answer, that's the Ohio Department of Health, they can answer that better than me.
G. Phillips, ODH, we do have involvement at the site in concert with Ohio EPA as well as working with DOE. And we can talk about our activities at the site, and if that's desired, we're certainly willing to continue to work with the community on concerns.
Are you over the radiation part of the facility? That's what we've been told. We were told the NRC was, which they aren't. DOE has been all these years, and they hide behind the NRC. Now they're hiding behind the health department.
So I'll have David speak to our actual David Lip, our health physicist, speak to our involvement in the site.
I have a question.
Hold on, let's just go ahead, David, if you're gonna just. And just as a reminder, this is the first, depending on what this looks like going forward, this is the first of several meetings. So we're not obviously gonna get to everybody's question. We're here from everybody. We're gonna do the best as we can. And we're gonna go ahead and let ODH speak again.
Okay. I'm David Lip, health physicist with the Department of Health of the state. The site's a federal facility. We're a state agency. We don't have jurisdiction on site to do that.
So we're saying DOE.
It's a DOE site. We work with the Department of Energy. We work with Ohio EPA to review radiological information that DOE puts out as work packages. That's kind of the limit of our current interaction with the state. We can't go on site by ourselves and do inspections. We can't go and take samples on site. We can work with DOE to do confirmatory for release of parcel 1. We did walkovers with our own radiation detectors. Again, we don't regulate the federal sites.
Who does then?
The department is a Department of Energy site.
DOE and DOD?
Self-police.
This is a DOD site because we did weapons here.
I'd like to say something. I'm from Kentucky.
Thanks, David.
I'm from
Short and
Kentucky.
sweet.
All right, I'm from Kentucky. went to one of your board meetings, someone laughed because I was from Kentucky. DOE, doing this rod and the SSAB, said, we'll pick the 5, and I'm from a poor county, Green County, but about the 5 poorest counties in Ohio that need work, and says, well, you want that thing out there? Sure we do, we want work, but we don't want it unsafe. And the person that was sitting there a while ago with their hammer, get it going, get it going. I was there when they buried the plant from Huntington. I spoke in 1999 and accused DOE of criminality when they first admitted that there was plutonium on the plant. Now, they attacked Brian Colley through the newspaper and said, why, we've always said that. 1999, Dr. David Michaels, I was at the meeting. I testified in the United States Senate. They falsified testimony to the Senate Committee on Governmental Affairs through the I have those documents. You want to see them in a meeting? It was there. OCAS, I accused them of criminal. It's scripted. Larry Elliott of the EEOICPA. And now that's another subject.
Mr. Wolf, we appreciate your cooperation. We want to hear from our commissioners.
Okay, one last thing. Are the people out in the community going to be covered by the employees' occupational illness? Because this stuff is leaving, and Larry Elliott of the EEOICPA said there was a criminal conspiracy to order radiation dose at Pike, and it's on the page.
I appreciate your concern and your passion, but
The question for DOE, come Monday morning, are you guys going to have a meeting on this new stuff that you found out and try to stop that work out there for right now?
That's my question as well.
So we will have to look at the data, and I'm just a liaison here, to represent it. My job was to present this information to you. Do you understand the low level?
We have a representative of DOE here.
I
And you
am a
are also
representative.
the project manager for
No, I'm
Portsmouth.
not.
You said it's your project?
No, I'm the facility representative.
The facility
Johnny
representative.
Rising is the project manager. Now listen, we will have public meetings coming up. As Greg said, we would encourage everyone to attend. The project managers will be there at those public meetings. Bring your questions.
You don't answer questions, it's like to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the very back, you've had your hand up several times. I haven't got to you. I'll get it.
Hello everyone, my name is Crystal Glass. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a very rare cancer that affects less than 1% of all female cancers. I did not meet criteria to get this cancer. My main question is, about 2 weeks ago, there was a fire in the 333 building, and my parents live about a mile and a half roughly from there. My daughter is there often. Is there going to be any type of report to let anyone know, like, was anything released into the air?
I'll let JD
Yeah, I'm JD Dowell. I'm the deputy manager for the contractors supporting the Department of Energy. We provided the Department of Ohio a report this week, actually, in draft. Ohio's got that report. They're going to review it. There is information pending. It took us time to get that report. As you know, that was in a classified area. It just takes time to do that.
Right.
That report indicates that there was no receptive information outside the building that indicated any kind of fire inside the building. It was a clean sample. We're separating outside the building.
I appreciate your response.
Summary.
A follow-up to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you had a fire the 24th of last month, correct? 14th of March, last month. You had a major fire similar to that in the Oak Ridge situation. You know, we've pulled millions of components out of that building without ever having a fire. But in this informed society today, if we go out here and we build a fire out of wood, we have a pretty good idea of what comes out of it. We build a fire with coal, we know what comes out of it. We build a fire with oil, we know what comes out of it. What I want to know is, what would you expect to be released from a fire from inside the components? Don't tell me what the results were that you got when you monitor. Tell me if you have that exothermic reaction fire, what is the anticipated release in the smoke? What components would you expect to be released from that fire?
Sir, I don't know the answer to that question. We have a program in place for industrial hygiene. JD may be able to elaborate what actual monitoring was.
The fact is, that's the problem. That we've had these fires, you've got a history of the fires going from the Oak Ridge plant, from the same material. We ought to know what is likely to be released when we have one of those fires. If we don't know that today, what are we doing?
So John, the report is clear about the risk to human health and environment, and that is something that Ohio EPA is going to take a look at. They are doing an independent analysis of that. They're going to have questions for us, I'm sure of that. That's a robust process. They're an independent source. The part that we're talking about, as you know, is classified information. It's still on the world market as a classified area. We cannot talk about it.
What I'm saying you can talk about is what gets released when it burns. What is likely to come out of an expected exothermic reaction that's going to be released in the environment.
And so the report captures all that risk to the public. It captures that risk to the worker and the co-located worker. And I think it'll stand alone. And as it gets released to the public, you guys, if you have more questions, please bring them forward.
Yeah, I was told I got to get a FOIA request to get it, but I'm asking you, and are you telling me that it's classified what gets released into the environment from that exothermic reaction? Are you telling me that in itself is classified?
John, let's go ahead. I think the scientists have a little background on it, so let's go. Thank you. Go ahead if you've got any information on what we want the fire force, please. About potentially what could be released. Yeah, if you could weigh in on that for us, please, and talk loud if you can.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm not really an expert, that much of an expert in fires and properties of metals, but I've taken a course in inorganic chemistry. And I do know in sort of a general way that uranium metals and other similar metals have a property that's said to be hydrophoric. And basically, what that means is that they will react with oxygen and water readily, especially when they're finely divided, and they will burn very intensely. A rough analogy is like a sparkler, that's made out of magnesium metal. And it's a very, very hot fire, very exothermic, releases a lot of heat, and it will produce aerosols, and those aerosols are going to go everywhere. And, an analogy for this is that's how depleted uranium rounds work and how depleted uranium dust gets dispersed into the environment from using those. So, it's I think it's a very dangerous scenario. Again, not speaking as an expert, but I can give you one rough analogy. I'm familiar with the Rocky Flat plant, and plutonium has similar properties, probably even worse. And there's been fires. There's been fires at the Rocky Flat plant throughout its operation where plutonium metal burned and produced aerosols that went all through the Denver area.
So just a real quick analogy, I've been involved in 3 power fires related to depleted fuel. This is not one of those. So, and that's where we have to stop the conversation.
Thank you. We're going to do just a couple more and then final statement, and we're going to be done. So if someone has one, go ahead. And let's make them concerned about what we've talked about today, not something in the past, and not any accusatory things, or we'll wrap it up now. Go ahead.
What is the human effect of what is put out by these fires, these airborne particles? How is it going to affect us, our children? And what are you going to do to stop it?
Basically, the same monitoring program that we had in place during the fire. None of the results were above action levels for that fire. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for.
If it puts out aerosols or whatever, and we inhale it or we absorb it through our skin, what is the human cost? What are we going to be suffering? Are we going to have big boils coming out on us? Are we going to have our lungs shriveled up? Are we going to develop cancers, tumors? How is it going to affect us as human beings and our children?
So this is why I encourage you all probably to come to those public sessions, because we can actually capture those human biological effects. I'm a product of the Navy Nuclear Power Program, 26 years. We've been studying this since the atomic weapons were used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We've got a lot of data on low-level ionized irradiation for people. What you're talking about are the metal results, the things that are the toxic stuff that gets in the air. So again, the sampling program that we have, the 16 sample areas that we talked about for airborne, is just one of the legs of the sampling program that includes water, it includes groundwater, it includes surface water, it includes effluent that we release from the plant, and it includes soil. So it's a multifaceted program that is designed to capture and contain any information coming off that site that indicates that we're seeing a risk to the public. So when we see a spike, we talked about an answer earlier, we would take action for that, okay? Right now, we're not seeing anything with actual levels on any of these releases, specifically for the samples we're talking about for neptunium, but also for other constituents that we have concerns for. Now, you asked about what types of things would happen. And this goes back to that risk assessment. EPA has assigned levels that we follow under law. These are laws. We don't have a choice. Department of Energy has those laws flow down into orders, which we don't have a choice if we have to follow those. That protects our public, and those laws and orders are specifically designed for that. And it's all built around cancer risk. It's all built around what would happen if I were exposed to this much radiation, or in this case, the neptunium is a radiation risk. What would happen if I got exposed at a specific level? Those are built around a 10 to the minus 6 increase in the risk of getting cancer at the levels that we set, and that's 24/7, breathing that air zone constantly for 365 days. We're orders of magnitude, 4 to 5 orders of magnitude below that with the samples that we see. So that is inherently, that translates to that risk. So the risk is negligible. It's negligible from a standpoint of what you're seeing in background. But it all comes down to the risk is in low ionizing radiation causing cancer. That is the basis of radiation risk to the public and to workers in the United States. It's with low level ionizing radiation. Now, if you had an acute exposure, we don't have acute exposures here. Not with our workers, not with our public. Acute exposures would give you a different effect, a much more acute effect. You probably heard about that in Chernobyl, where helicopter pilots got sick immediately. We don't have that here.
Okay, we're going to do 2 questions, and I know we can't get to everybody. Josh in the back, and then we'll go with Mayor Kempton, and then that's going to be it for questions. I know if you have questions, we'll figure out a forum. Like I said, this is going to be the first of several meetings. I apologize, I know everybody wants a question, but it's just not feasible. Josh in the back.
Quick question from DOE. Was there another fire in the X333 last night? And if so, was it reported to the Ohio EPA and the Health Department?
Yes, we did have another fire last night. It was during the plasma cutting of a converter inside the MSA, which is an airborne area that is also monitored and controlled. The plasma cutting requires a kerf shield to be placed behind the cut to prevent that overspray of the plasma cutting to causing another metals fire. And this kerf shield was made out of carbon fiber, and it actually did catch fire. It took about a minute or so to get the kerf shield out. A blanket was placed upon it, and it did extinguish in just a matter of moments. Joe Bradford contacted Craig Butler and let them know about the fire, and we are actually going to brief them further after this meeting.
Was the Health Department
The Pike County Health Department?
Yes.
Did you get a call, Matt?
We did not get a call.
Thank you.
Mayor Kempton?
Yeah, there's one thing, as I was listening to this, we keep talking about the levels of neptunium. So as we're staying on this current thing, just through the research that I've done, 2 things. First of all, I think the correct statement isn't that it's possible that this is coming from the plant. I think the correct statement is highly likely. It is man-made. What does happen, you can stumble across in nature, appears to be man-made sources. But when it actually comes to the health effects, since neptunium is never encountered outside of nuclear facilities or research laboratories, there is not a lot of studies directly linked to it. A lot of what the studies are, if you go back, are similar atoms in the way the neutrons are. They do know it collects in bones, so bone cancer is an immediate risk. However, when they're actually looking at other similar substances causing that. So truly, to get a level of neptunium and go with it, seems to be a bit of a reach to say it's safe, because every bit of research I can find is not specifically to that element. It's going to other related things, and literally it has not been studied much directly because it is so rare and it's only in these nuclear facilities. So I think whenever we say it's at safe levels, I don't think that there is a safe level determined for that yet.
Yeah, okay, again, when we say safe level, we have to have a number associated with that. So we take all of the radiation effects and we put them into a basis that relates to biological effects on humans. The millirem is a gradient approach that does that. That's the factor that we use. So when we looked at neptunium, we know what levels would significantly contribute to those levels. And the level that we talked about, 0.12 millirem, is an apples-to-apples comparison to the 100 millirem that is required by law and the 10 millirem, which is required by NEOSH, for us to protect the public. So think about that. 0.12 millirem is well underneath 10 millirem. I think the Navy, and I'll quote this, don't quote me on this, but I think we used an analogy where if you took a flight to Denver, you get about 100 millirem of exposure because you're that much closer to the sun, ionizing radiation. That's all an apples-to-apples comparison. So your risk factor is based on that level that we measure out in the field. And when we're measuring, I think it was 0.00015 picograms per meters cubed. Don't quote me on that, it's in the reports that will come out. We equate that to that millirem exposure, and it's a cumulative exposure. So it's 0.12 relative to a 10 millirem NIOSH factor, which is based on a 24/7 exposure of you breathing that level of contaminant. So it's very conservative, and it's a low level. I know we had, the experts were talking about neptunium and the source of it. I don't think we are saying it doesn't come from the site because we have the recycled uranium. And so we knew that there was contaminants in some of that material that came through in the 70s. And all it took was a little bit, because we didn't keep doing it. Paducah actually got most of that. But
we actually got a bunch of it.
Yes, ma'am. We did get some.
No, like Savannah River.
Let him talk.
But the bottom line is that we have to look at the levels. So when you look at the levels of uranium 234, 235, 238 is really, and technetium-99 are really the constituents that we have a larger mass of, and that those are of greater concern. Everything we do with that sampling program I talked about earlier actually looks at those things, and we are constantly looking at the risk to the public. That's our number one job, is safety of the public. And number two is safety for our workers. So that you guys can walk away saying, is the 0.12 acceptable? You know, I can see everyone does not want to have radiation exposure for anybody at any time. But it's out there. I mean, it's out there. And in this case, the 0.12 falls underneath a safe level that's been assessed by law.
What happens when a child ingests
Just real quick, like, most of the stuff that I've seen on the neptunium directly is studied animals being affected by it. Since there's not large studies, there are several out there that show a significant increase in bone tumors in animals near radioactive disposal sites.
And a lot of that has to do with ingestion.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Well, we've got school board representatives, so I think we should give Brandon, who's the president.
I'm the president of the local school board Pike side of the valley. I've got Mr. Smith here, Mr. Cutler, Mr. Fuller, Ms. Jenkins, our treasurer. And we didn't cause this problem, but it is a problem for us now. And there's no rate acceptable for me. We did not make it. I wasn't even born when it was all going on. And I know all you guys, you're good people, but it is a problem. And we've had so many students pass away in the Southern Valley, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And we're just tired. I mean, I've got a little kid sitting right here, his mom and dad. I mean, he has no voice. We're all grown human beings here. We just have to work together to fix this.
Care about our community, that is all we ask.
That's exactly, that's all we ask. It's time to take a stand.
Your
What
view
fast
is
response in 2017? You found out in a month. It should have been figured out right then.
Give us the 18 data, it doesn't have to be in the form of the 18.
Let's let Brandon finish and then we're going.
The reports, I mean, seriously, guys, I had this, whenever I had a liquid manure business, I had to give a report back to the home barn to submit to the EPA. I mean, I sat on the SSAB board. Unfortunately, I had an accident. I got to know some of it. The EPA was very, very vocal when this all started. But now why are we hush-hush for? I mean, you can't pour oil on your own property, motor oil, if not, you get in trouble. Gas spill. But we're talking about bad stuff now. But I understand you probably can't talk, but it's a shame. I mean, it is. That's all I can say.
So I hear you, and so when we talk about the detection of neptunium at the school.
It's zero except for me.
One more time, Ross, one more time. Every day them kids go outside, take a break, take a recess, and they're out there playing. They're stuck in that area every day. Now, how much of doses are they getting every day? Can you tell me that?
Yeah, what I'm saying.
Got him answered.
So when we look at the upstream samples that are away from the school and away from the plant, the difference between that sample and the sample that we're taking at the school are minuscule in relative to the reference that I talked about. There is, whether we like it or not, there's neptunium, there's a lot of plutonium, there's a lot of uranium in the air.
All from your site.
No, it's from the country. It's from what we've done in the past. You can show that data. I mean, again, you guys do not trust me. I understand we don't have a lot of trust in you. I understand that. However, we want to be as forthright and open as we can. Please come to those public open houses. The experts are going to be there. I'd like to walk away with questions that we have to go answer them.
So this isn't an expert that have to answer. You said you have children here, you guys have children here. You said you found out and they know within a month. So in 2017, they took that sample and they knew in a month. Why didn't somebody get on my school?
Well, here's the reason. Let me explain that real quick, because that was, when you said that, I'd like to answer that directly.
Yeah, please.
That's one of the program monitors that sample. As soon as we get that sample back, someone is looking at that data to see if it is above that level and if it's still protected. If it's not protective, we immediately notify our regulators and we immediately take action, whether that's stopping the plant. And we couldn't answer the question in the last 30 years whether we stopped that or not, because I don't know if anyone can do that themselves. Larry or John, maybe.
How many children
you guys
are
know.
checked? I mean, why isn't the school being checked?
Why isn't the school being checked?
He said, how many children have you checked for exposure?
Well, it's not that simple. Well, just a minute. We checked that school because that's where we put a monitor, because we thought that was the most appropriate
But
place.
then you checked the school afterwards. He said
It's not the school, it's the location of that zone, because that's where we want to make sure that it's protected. It's downwind.
You guys checked the school specifically inside.
That monitor is put there because it's downwind of the zone. It's the most likely place that we think we would like to detect, to be our best indicator. It's the canary in the coal mine. It's the best place where we would like to make sure that we're not releasing any information or any contamination outside.
Thank you. That's it for questions, John. I know you got a little bit, but we've got to end it at some point.
Misinformation I can't let go unchecked. The fact of the matter is, prior to 2000, Paducah never shipped anything any place but Portsmouth or Oak Ridge. They didn't ship anywhere else. All the stuff that got fed at Paducah, most of it came to Portsmouth after it got fed at Paducah. Because they didn't ship it anywhere. They were the roughing plant. We were the finishing plant. So everything that got fed at Paducah came to Portsmouth.
I have a quick question for him.
No, I apologize. I know everybody's got a question, but we've got to end it at some point.
Recycling uranium, I'm trying to find out if that's.
They'll be, I mean, if they're willing to stay after and answer a few questions, civil, that's fine, and then we'll have a forum where there can be questions submitted, because everybody's got a question. It's not feasible for one.
What's the next
meeting.
step,
When's the next meeting?
Next week, we do not have that. I want to talk a little bit, and then I do have one easier question. I know you guys have had a lot of tough questions. who does the sampling for DOE at the site? Like for the, who analyzes the filters or any environmental samples currently at the plant?
So we use, Ford B&W is our operations contractor. They do all the sample exchanges and that kind of thing. They are prepared by an off-site lab. These samples in 2017 were analyzed by Southwest Research Institute. We use other lab accredited labs. It just depends on how the contracts are vetted and that kind of thing. Now, they are an independent lab which undergoes extensive QA/QC control in their sampling. So we also receive back from them data packages which provide the QA/QC control in support of their detections.
Is there still a local lab on site?
There is.
Yes, and we use them for some things, but not for your sample. It's not environmental.
And they also check all the samples we get back the subcontractors.
That was my question, that if we got a local lab, the guys have worked there for years and years, is familiar with the site, I'm not really sure why we're sending it off, but we'll see it here one day. I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank everybody. I know it's, this is a very emotional, can be emotional, and everybody has a stance one way or the other. Thank the commissioners for coming, ODH, DOE, EPA, representatives from Brown and Commissioner's office, we appreciate that. And most of all the public. I mean, this is really about you, it's about your safety, it's about your kids' safety. And I know, this could go on for a long time. Again, we will let you know when the meeting is, the next meeting. And DOE, this information, the new, more concerning, the air monitor is one situation. This independent data is a whole nother issue that, if you say the neptunium hit at the school is an anomaly, it's an anomaly. I probably would have had to resample it, had to check a couple times before I put it in a report, but that didn't happen. So, anyways, that's where we're at. But again, thank everybody for coming. And the health district, again, the health commissioner. I'm speaking for the Board of Health. We stated last week our position. I'm just going to read a lot of this because my mouth's getting dry. We stated this week that it was the position of the Pike County General Health District that the off-site contamination disclosed in the ACER report was a result of contamination from construction activities at the on-site disposal site. I've listened to positions from DOE today, and I appreciate all the information we've gotten. This is the first step. This is to get the information out of there. Now we know potentially what we have, give them a chance to check it, look at it, and is it a problem, and then go forward. So I'm not convinced at all that this contamination, that it fell out of the sky, above a school when we have a nuclear facility, just down the road. So logic defies, such an opinion. With the new independent data, that we've heard today, that just reinforces our position. We're not rescinding our press release to say that the on-site, the construction at the on-site, we're saying, we want more information. We're not pointing fingers and saying this. We need to say we need more information. Is it dangerous? What needs done if it is? If it's not dangerous, then we had a public meeting, great turnout, and which is what it should be. So I'd rather do a whole lot to do about nothing and err on the side of caution and have no issue down the road. City neptunium levels 100 times higher, Little Beaver Creek 50 times higher in the Soda River. It's that much higher, but doesn't mean anything. That's what we need to know. But I would rather have this meeting, present this information, have that checked and tested by experts, which isn't the health department. Our job is to call for help. And that's what we're doing. Extensive environmental survey, sample this stuff, see what's there, and have a plan going forward.
And check out some of the...
Hold on, please. There's a basic principle, that must be communicated, and this issue has to be spoken in terms of risk, which we've mentioned several times today. Is it true that we have risks every day? Mention the airplane. Yeah, that's a risk. Driving anywhere is a risk. But those risks we decide for ourselves.
Yes.
If we have a smoke detector, I can go to Walmart and buy a smoke detector. Walmart didn't tell me to say that, so. But that's my choice. If I want to eat bananas, if I want to eat, all these other analogies that are used to say it's okay, that's my choice. Right. But the kids have a choice to go to school.
Exactly.
I mean, if they're a teenager, they might think they have a choice, but they don't have a choice. You know, I mean, so that's, you know, in this case, there's risk in our community, no matter how big or small. That's what we need to determine, that we didn't create, but it's left for us to deal with, you know, like Brandon said. It is the responsibility of the Pike County General Health District to protect human health along with the environment. We recognize the Department of Energy has some level of autonomy over their site, but what we're discussing is on outside of the fence, down Little Beaver Creek, where it dumps into Cider River, outside of the fence, not inside. You know, that's unquestionably the health district's responsibility is outside of the fence. To that end, we are calling on our state and federal partners to assist us to stop construction, move forward with a full investigation of all site contamination, which I don't think anyone would disagree with. I don't think anyone wants a huge problem, so why not stop what we're doing and figure out if there is a problem.
Yes.
As with any contamination event, we work to determine the extent, levels, source, and potential health impacts. Are those levels harmful? You know, that's what we got to figure out. So, the Pike County General Health District stand by its statement, and in the strongest terms possible is calling on DOE to suspend activities on the on-site until such a time that it's clear that no off-site contamination will reach beyond the plant property. That's what we're asking. Furthermore, the Health District is calling on the Ohio EPA, the Ohio Department of Health, Governor Mike DeWine, local elected officials, and perhaps most importantly, Senators Rob Portman, Sherry Brown, U.S. Representative Brad Winstrup to support our decision to call for a cessation of the cell construction activities until it is determined that harmful contamination will not reach our citizens. If we do all this testing, you know, and they find out that it's nothing, it's safe, then, you know, then that's great. But that's what we got to figure out. So this information is the first step. We'll have, you know, further steps, further meetings. And again, I want to thank, you know, everybody that took out their Saturday, traveled some long distances to get here and speak, you know, and hear you guys. So again, thank everyone and have a safe weekend.